Welcome to another edition of Green is Good. We're so honored today to have with us Colleen Patrick-Goudreau. She's an author, speaker, education leader, and compassionate crusader. Welcome to Green is Good, Colleen.
Thank you, John. Thank you for having me.
Hey, listen, for our listeners who want to follow along as we get the honor of interviewing Colleen today, you could go to her great website, www.joyfulvegan.com. Colleen, before we get talking about all the work you're doing in terms of thought leadership as vegan royalty, can you share your backstory leading up to becoming a vegan? What was your journey before you took on this real leadership role in the vegan world?
Well, I'm like everybody else who grew up eating animals. I grew up on the East Coast. I grew up in New Jersey.
Yeah.
Though you're not supposed to hear that in my voice anymore because once you move to California, you lose your accent. I grew up in New Jersey, and I grew up in a family, I loved animals. I loved my dog. I was brought to the zoo. I was dressed in clothing that had animals all over them. I was read books about animals. I watched movies about animals. In every way, I was taught that animals were a huge part of my life and my development. And I didn't know I was being fed animals. I had no idea. And when I started to get the idea, I was given some pretty lame excuses and reasons, and nothing ever changed. And I continued to eat them. And I don't think I could say that I just went on and eating them happily, because I think there's always something in the back of your mind feeling uncomfortable about it, and I think that's where our excuses come from. If we're comfortable with something, we don't have to make justifications for it. So when I was about 19, I read Diet for a New America, and it was the first time I had made the connection between the animals I was eating and the violence I was contributing to, and it started me on my own journey of learning everything I could about these issues, and the most immediate thing I could do was not participate. And so I stopped eating land animals and eventually stopped eating anything that came out of the sea, and then eventually anything that came off of or out of an animal. And I always say that moment when that happened, when I quote-unquote became vegan, it's such an interesting phrase we use, but it really is this moment of awakening. And it was that for me. It was this moment of absolute awakening where I looked at the world through a completely different lens than I had before. Completely different in the sense that everything was very clear to me. Not completely different in that this was a new feeling. I had been a compassionate person. Compassion was a huge part of who I was, just as a person, even when I was eating animals. But what happened when I became vegan is that all the blocks to that compassion, to enable me to live compassionately, unconditionally, were removed. And that's really how I equate becoming vegan, is that I literally started manifesting the values that had already been inside of me in my behavior.
So cool. So, wow. I mean, back at 19, so you started really early. That's awesome.
I started early. I was 19 when I stopped eating land animals. It took me a good 7 years before I stopped eating, before I became vegan.
Right. Gotcha. And, you're the prolific author of 6 books, and I'll name some of them. The Joy of Vegan, which has become the Bible of vegan baking, The Vegan Table, Color Me Vegan, Vegan's Daily Companion, and all these books for our listeners out there. I mean, I own all of them. I highly encourage all of you to go on Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, or find them at other fine bookstores wherever you're at. You've become a shining star and a huge beacon of hope in the vegan world. What is it like to be a force of nature, and what are you up against in terms of misconceptions and challenges that are thrown at the vegan industry or people who want to eat this way? What are you fighting in terms of misconceptions and other lies that have been just promulgated out there against people who want to take us into the future and the right way of eating?
Well, it's really frustrating because people are so disempowered, and my work is really dedicated to giving people the information they need to feel empowered to manifest their values. of compassion and wellness. Whatever it is, whatever reason people are motivated to stop eating animals and anything that comes out of an animal, whatever reason they're motivated to do so, I want to be there to debunk all of the myths and to give them the tools they need to do it. That's really the gist of my work, and it's been the foundation of my work from the very beginning. And I think I've been successful because I've been so clear in that mission. I'm not trying to do anything other than give people what they need to manifest. I always say I'm not asking you to live according to my values. I'm urging you to live according to your own. And it's just really an incredible joy and honor to be able to be part of people's transformations. What's frustrating is that from the outside, it looks like this is something that's difficult, something that's hard, something that's niche, something that's alternative, when really this is about something we all care about, and that really is compassion. Most of us would never do to animals what we're paying people to do. And so, and people think that, there's an agenda and that it's something outside of what they're used to. And really, we're talking about fruits and vegetables and nuts and seeds and beans and mushrooms and grains and herbs and spices, things that people are already eating, but they don't call vegan. So everything I do is to kind of debunk those myths and demystify what quote-unquote vegan is, so people recognize that it's something that's already part of their lives. They just don't label it vegan, and it works. I mean, that approach really works for people because my work is very much based on accessibility and familiarity and quite literally joy. So that's what I try to bring to the table, and it attracts people, and it really works. The difference, the frustration is that I don't have the millions and billions of dollars of the industries who are persuading people to eat their products have, and that's what we're up against. But that's I don't dwell on that too much because I'm just trying to do my work and just kind of cut through all the noise.
Gotcha. And, and speaking of, you mentioned ethical and farming practices and, what's going on with animals right now is we had the founder of the sanctuary on Green is Good a couple of weeks back. Talk a little bit about your stance on ethical farming practices and what's going on with animals now with regards to feeding America, feeding the world, and how can we be better stewards of the planet by treating animals better than we've treated them historically?
Well, for me, the foundation of my work, especially around the animal protection, comes from the belief that I don't believe animals are here for us. And I think so much of what has gone wrong in our society for the last several hundred /1,000 years, because we haven't been farming animals for more than 10,000 years. But that's part of what the problem is that when we started doing that, we really changed our relationship with animals and with nature. And it's because we see them as here for us. And that, for me, is the problem. So with that as the problem, the solution for me isn't, we'll treat them better. The solution is, don't use them. They're not here for us. They have their own desires and their own needs and their own lives and their own bodies and their own offspring, and they're not here for me. So for me, I would rather see us move in the direction of getting away from this very old, strange practice of impregnating animals so that we could force her to lactate so we could take her milk for what? We don't even drink our own human milk into adulthood. It doesn't even make any sense. The animals whose milk we're taking, their offspring don't even drink their milk into adulthood. It doesn't make any sense. So why would we do that? Why would we go through the animals to get to the nutrients that the animals have in their flesh and secretions because they're eating plants? So we need to skip the middle animal and go directly to the plants for our nutrition and for everything we need, rather than use all the resources that it takes to keep and to use and to kill animals. It's not good for them. It's not good for us. So I don't really think there's a way to do it in a way that really honors, A, what we really do care about, B, that honors the animals themselves and their own, autonomy, and C, the resources that it takes to farm animals.
For our listeners who just joined us, we're so excited to have Colleen Patrick-Goudreau with us today. To learn more about all of Colleen's important and great work, you could go to thejoyfulvegan.com, just joyfulvegan.com. GreenIsGood.com. You could learn about everything she's doing. There's podcasts there. All of her 6 books are there to buy, and lots of other resources. Colleen, one of the top things now that are being discussed in society and in the media is this whole paleo versus vegan thing. Mm-hmm. What do you make of this paleo versus vegan? It sounds like almost like a UFC cage fight, and it's like it's all or nothing to the death. And paleos don't want to hear about anything about vegans, and they think that that's all wrong. And vegans are really not too keen on this whole paleo publicity trend. What's your take on this?
It's just another diet, and it's so frustrating because people think there's more credibility to it because you use buzzwords like traditional and ancient and artisan and ancestors and paleo. I mean, you use these words that have these romantic notions associated with them, and so then people think there's something more credible about it. It's a diet. Right. It's a diet just like the Atkins diet is a diet, and I don't have to. That's all it is, and yet it's taken off like crazy. Now, the difference for me is that I don't look at vegan as a diet. I don't. For me, vegan is just the manifestation of compassion. It's just another word for living compassionately, and so for me, that's the foundation of veganism. Though it's been, it's talked about in the media a lot as a diet. It doesn't have to be complicated. People are so confused. It comes back to what I said before. They're so confused. Yeah. They're so disempowered. They hear all of these different things in the media about what they should eat, what they shouldn't eat. The new study that came out: that coffee's good, that coffee's not good, that wine is good, that wine's not good, that this is a power food. Blueberries, they're the new power food. Just eat plants. Like, it doesn't have to be more complicated than make the foundation of your diet whole foods. Make the foundation of your diet whole foods. That's the principle behind my book, Color Me Vegan. I'm not spouting a particular kind of diet. Here's what I'm spouting: eat by color. That's all you need to do. I'm not, that's all you need to do is when you go to the grocery store, choose as much color as you can, as much variety of color as you can, because in the color of plant foods is all the phytochemicals, and those phytochemicals affect different parts of our bodies in a really positive way. So we've heard of, beta carotene. Everyone knows beta carotene in carrots. We know that the beta carotene is really good for our eyes. We've heard of lycopene in tomatoes. We know lycopene is really good for the prostate. So when you pick these different colors and eat these different colors, it affects the different parts of our bodies in a really positive way. You don't have to follow a plan. You don't have to buy certain recipes and certain books. I mean, it doesn't have to be more complicated than eat by color and eat whole foods.
And we love to give solutions on Green is Good, and you bring up a great point. Coach some of our listeners out there that are thinking of making the switch and feel that it's too daunting of a process. Can you give some tips to make the switch from an animal-based diet to a plant-based diet, and also some of your favorite tips that you integrate into your life? Are supplements necessary, or any type of vitamins or any other type of things necessary? What should people do if they're on the fence right now and they really do want to make a switch? They're just a little bit nervous to do so.
Sure. So first of all, I want to mention the 30-Day Vegan Challenge, because I have an online program right now called 30dayveganchallenge.com. That's where they can go. The book is coming out in January 2015, and it answers all of these kinds of questions about supplements and cooking and making the time to cook and getting in the kitchen and chopping vegetables and eating out and traveling and all of it. But to your question, the first thing I would say is start where you're at. A lot of people say things like, oh, my God, I could totally give up chicken and meat. I could totally give up all of that, but I could never give up X, right? And it's usually cheese. So they say, I could give up meat, but I couldn't give up cheese. And I say, okay, well, give up meat and don't give up cheese. Like, start somewhere, right? But don't do nothing because you can't do everything. Do something. And that's the first thing I would say to people. People think that they have to do everything, and since they feel like they can't right away, they do nothing at all. So don't do nothing because you can't do everything. Start where you are. The second thing is, I would say, start substituting things that are familiar to you, that it's part of your daily diet, that are easy switches. So start using plant-based milks. The only beverage we have a requirement for is water. But but we're so used to having milk in our culture, right? So we're so used to animal milk, and of course people know that there are a ton of plant milks out there. There's soy milk, there's almond milk, there's hemp milk, there's rice milk, there's cashew milk, peanut milk. I mean, you can make milk from any grain and any nut, any seed. So start switching out the milks that you're using, maybe for your cereal, maybe for your coffee, maybe for baking. And same thing with butter. Earth Balance is an amazing, wonderful, it's a non-dairy butter, and people say, oh, it's fake butter. No, it's butter. It's just made from plant fat rather than animal fat. So start switching out those things that you can, and you can. So it means you're still having all of the familiar things in your repertoire, but you're just using more healthful, compassionate versions. So those are the places I would start. And you know what? Raise the bar a little bit. Get back in the kitchen. People complain that they don't have time to chop vegetables. We have the time to chop vegetables. We're not making the time to chop some vegetables. It doesn't take more than 15 minutes a day to chop some vegetables, put them in some containers, put them in the refrigerator, so that when we come home and it's time for dinner, we go, oh, it's chopped up. I can make a soup. I can make a stir fry. I can make something healthy, rather than just pulling out a frozen pizza because we think we don't have time.
Colleen, we're down to the last 4 minutes or so, and there's so many questions I want to ask you, and I want our listeners to learn more about you. But more specifically, we're going into interesting times in terms of leadership roles and folks that are really showing us a better way. And I believe I've been a huge fan of yours forever, and you are a force of nature. Who writes 6 books? Most people are just happy to get one book out in their life. You've done 6. So I'm just fascinated. I know listeners would be very interested. What gets you up out of bed in the morning? What drives you? How have you become such an important force of nature in this new, food evolution, which is really in so many ways become a food revolution, but it's the appropriate evolution. And who's been your heroes? Who's inspired you to go do the great work and the important work that you're currently doing?
Well, thank you. First of all, thank you. What gets me out of bed in the morning is the animals. I mean, I do this for them. This is all for the animals, and that includes human animals. And what drives me is that I know that to be their voice is the most, it's just such an incredible honor to be their voice. They don't have a voice, and they need us to speak for them. So to be able to get up every morning and make that that's the main thing on my to-do list, that's pretty motivating. And then the second thing is that I know that in doing that, it's working, and I hear from so many people all around the world who tell me that their lives have been transformed because of a podcast of mine they listened to, or a book of mine that they read, or a talk that I gave that they heard, and how can I not keep going? I know something's working for people. So that really motivates me. I mean, it really is my inspiration, aside from the animals, are the people who are open, the people who say, I want to be better, I want to do it differently, I'm open, tell me how I can do this differently. We're not going to be perfect. None of us are perfect. This is not about purity. This is not about a certification in perfection. This is about doing the best we can to make the most compassionate choices. And I know there are millions of people out there who want to make the right choices. Those are the people who are my inspiration, who come and say, tell me, I'm open, just tell me how, guide me. And that's what motivates me. It's the most beautiful thing. I know people are good people and want to do the right thing, and I'm just honored that I can, provide some guidance, provide some tools to make that possible for them.
Colleen, we're down to the last 2 minutes or so. Talk about your latest campaign around the 30-Day Vegan Challenge, which is your new book coming out January 2015. Share what you did with that and how that's going so far.
Yeah, it's really exciting. So the 30-Day Vegan Challenge is coming out in January, hopefully maybe the holidays of 2014. Okay. And I decided to go to my public, to our community of amazing people who believe in this work and who know how important it is. And we funded the book to publish the book. So I'm in the production process right now of editing and doing the photography. I mean, I'm hiring out all of the the professionals to do all of the work to make this a beautiful, special book. And this is a book that literally guides people, gives people the tools they need to actually make this transition and to do it joyfully and healthfully and confidently. So it was pretty amazing. I've had books published by, obviously, publishers, traditional publishers, including Random House, and it was just an honor to go right to my public and say, let's do this together. That way I don't have to ask anybody else for permission. I just need your support. So
well, we're going to have you back on. We're going to have you back on to further discuss the 30-Day Vegan Challenge and to buy all of Colleen's great books. You could go on Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, or go into one of your local bookstores and buy and enjoy her great books and start cooking vegan. Go to joyfulvegan.com to learn more about Colleen. You can buy her books there, listen to her podcast. Thank you, Colleen, for being an inspiring, visionary, veganpreneur and compassionate crusader. You are truly living proof that green is good.